I'm going to start before the film industry. I was born in 1940. And when I was a kid, maybe 12 years old or so, I discovered Life magazine. Now, in this day and age of everything on the internet and cell phones and stuff like that, it's hard to appreciate. Life magazine was this big, extremely well done magazine that came out every week. And without, when television was very new, and without cell phones, without all that, this was this was essential. This was how everybody learned about life, and it was a very successful magazine. And they had the best photographers in the world. To be a Life magazine photographer was like the height, the summit, just as high as you could possibly be. And I had consumed it. I just loved it. I took every issue every week, and I got where I could look at the pictures and identify the photographer. I knew what photographers shot what kinds of pictures, what their styles were, and I could say, "Oh, that's a Jean Mille, and this is he was someone else," and all that. So as a kid, I just got consumed with it, and what it was is I was learning to love photography. When I was 15, 1955, a book came out. There was a book of a great photo exhibit called The Family of Man. Edward Steichen was the photography curator and a great photographer himself at the New York Museum of Modern Art, which was the foremost museum in the world of photography. They were the people with the deepest artistic insight into photography. And Steichen made an exhibit not of his own work, but of work that he selected that would reflect the family of man, or I should say, the family of humans. In those days, you said man, now you say humans or people. And there was a whole section that said, "We too form a multitude of husbands and wives." There were families from all over the world. You looked at the faces. It was just brilliant. It was moving. It was not only heartwarming, it was enlightening. It just was enlightening. And this book, when it came out, we had a little paperback of it, very well printed. And this was my Bible. And I knew every photograph in the book. And I was just this deep, deep committed photography fan. Eventually, I saw the exhibit, which was amazing. And there were sometimes you would be going along, and there was a picture looking straight up a tree of a lumberjack high up on a tree with an axe, but they were put it over your head like a ceiling piece, and you catch it in the corner of your eye, and you react back there, and you would see this stuff. So seeing the exhibit was just one of your a young man's life ambitions. Okay, so I was going into that. Um, I worked mowing people's lawns, and we lived in a suburb, and everybody had lawns. And I bought a lawnmower and worked and mowed lawns, and I think I delivered papers and did the usual stuff like that. And I earned money, and I always was a little bit of a not a con man, but I was clever, and so someone was going to Europe, where things like Leica cameras were half the price than they were in the United States. So I had this person. I made a deal with a local camera store, and they brought back, and I wound up with a Leica M3. Mind you, I'm like 16, 17 years old or something like this, and a 4x5 Linhof, a wonderful precision view camera. And so I really took up photography seriously. In high school, I was the yearbook photographer. I did all that, and I was really serious about doing that. Uh, I I went to college and flunked out. Went to a good college. I didn't have any study habits. I was not good at doing what other people wanted me to do. I was much better at doing what I wanted to do. Anyway, so I flunked out, and then I went to Europe, and I met a Life magazine photographer, Bob Schwalberg, and he invited me to stay with him at the Leica factory in Wetzlar, Germany, where I had access to everything Leica made, every lens they'd ever made, every gadget, and they let me use their darkroom. So this was absolutely heavenly, and I was on a path to become a professional photographer. But then that all changed because I had a dream. This dream was one of the turning points of my life. I was a great admirer of the photographer Margaret Bourke-White's work, and she had interviewed Gandhi, and she was going to photograph Gandhi on a spinning wheel. But before Gandhi would allow her to bring out the camera and shoot her first shot, she had to learn to use the spinning wheel. Gandhi was a deep man, and he insisted that she understand the process by having worked it in her hands and understood what he was doing. His level of truth, so to speak, was that deep. And she did that. And her pictures, pardon me, her pictures just send me into a trance. They were black and white, dark backgrounds, the graphics of the bright wheel and Gandhi's face and crosslight and all black and white, just absolutely stunning. And I loved that set. I was a big fan of them. And then the night after studying them and looking at them in the magazine, I had a dream. And it was her pictures, but in motion. Not only was the spinning wheel moving and his feet treadling and his face moving and all that, but the camera was moving, it was dancing. It would lunge in and lunge out and go up high and go around like a very agile crane. And it was all over the place and added the dimension. It would do 360s around and it just brought it to life. And I woke up with the decision that I would go into movies. I used to say, you can avoid mistakes or you can go for greatness, but you can't do both at the same time. If your mind is avoiding mistakes, it's holding you back. That's a negative thing. Greatness requires you to take chances. And my biggest challenge throughout my career was getting to my personal edge. Your personal edge where you're not sure. You're not doing something you've done 100 times and you know is going to work. You're not working out of your experience but you're breaking new ground. You're experimenting a little bit. You're unsure. You're right at the edge. That's the sweet spot. That's the magic creative spot. That's when you're excited and doing something, when you're taking a chance and there's a little danger. If you make a mistake, it's terrible. It can cost you your career. You feel personally bad. 30-something was a big career maker for me. It was a TV show. Edgewick and Marcel Herskovitz were the producers, and they were big, Edgewick was a huge director. He told me going into it, Bob, we want it bold. We want you to be bold. We want it to be contrasting. We want you to be gutsy. So they filled me with the desire that if I was bold and tried stuff, that they'd be supportive. This is the greatest gift a young cinematographer can have. So I was shooting it darker and darker, and we're shooting film. And you can underexpose film really easily. It doesn't have a lot of underexposure latitude. Digital's much, much better. And the printer, the guy printing, kept on printing me lighter. He thought I was too dark. I wasn't too dark. He kept on printing me lighter. So I kept on shooting darker. And we had this little war going on. And finally, I shot something, and it was just plain too dark. It was just too dark. And the dailies came up, and it was clearly too dark, clearly a mistake. And the producers, Zwick and Herskovitz, at lunchtime, we'd have all our 35 millimeter dailies and everybody would see them. It was a big public thing. And they turned to me, and I expected that they were going to tear me a new asshole or something, I expected to get bawled out. And they said, bold choice, Bob, keep it up. Can you believe that? It was definitely underexposed, but they were wanting me to maintain my edge and not to wimp out and not to react to the mistake and then start making it lighter, but to keep down there. Now, to me, that is precious. I taught graduate cinematography at American Film Institute at AFI for 8 years. And my biggest message, biggest thing I wanted is to get my students to go out there and to take risks and take chances. And if they got used to it, they develop the confidence. First of all, they develop an addiction to being on the edge, to being in that place where they were really out there and taking chances. And then if they did it over and over and over again at school and nothing bad happened, they developed the confidence to go out there. Because when you're starting off in your career and it's not a class and it's real, and maybe $200,000 is lost if you fuck up, and maybe it's you get fired and you instead of having a credit, you've got, and all this like that, stakes are high. It's really easy to play it safe. So I was trying to develop the courage for them to get out there and to do it. So if I have a message, that's basically the message. I think it's great, the greatest challenge. I didn't count how many films I shot, and I shot years and years and years of high quality television. So I shot so much stuff, and I'm 82 years old, and I was in my 20s when I broke in, that it's very, very hard to remember stuff. But I shot a movie the original title was Getting the Man's Foot Out of Your Ass and Other Life Lessons. Now, that's a pretty good title. It was from the Black culture. And the man's foot, the man, establishment, has got his foot up your ass. Getting the man's foot out of your ass and other life lessons. That was a hell of a title. We made the film, and Sony bought it and changed it to Badass, which was kind of stupid. But anyways, but that tells you there's a story going into it. We made it for like $1 million, and it was a period piece. It was very, very low budget. It was 95% handheld, and we just moved. We were fearless. We moved fast. It was right on the edge, and I think we captured the spirit and the style and the mentality of a lot of the '70s in it. And so I'm very proud of that one. It's a little bit of an underground film, although it had a reasonable box office. And so that, just because of the spirit we had doing it, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. And so it was a film made with a lot of freedom because we had so much money, and we just jammed into it, and all that. Everybody was there, not for the money, but because they wanted to be there. So that is memorable. My TV series, especially 30-something, Quantum Leap, and Felicity, I think probably had more impact than the feature films I shot. And I think the students I have hopefully inspired, and I'm mentoring right now. I've got a very talented and successful cinematographer in El Salvador, and a wonderful, wonderful young cinematographer in India that I mentor. And I think that probably the work my students do will be far greater and more important than the work I've done. And if I have a legacy, when you're 82, you think of this, it'll be more in the work of my students than in mine. We went to Key West, we went to New Orleans, we went to LA. The picture of the 5 bullets, and Pellegrino, the guy who played all the actor, is picking each bullet up and loading his thing with it. Those bullets were only that high. So we had to have a very wide macro lens. And where the camera was, to get the bullets in focus and him in focus, I had to shoot it at about f/16 or 22. So to make that shot, I needed a 10,000 watt light directly on him. So that's got to be done in the studio, a big light and all that. So that's why we went to LA with all the facilities and studios are and all that to do that. But that's kind of important in the strategy of the movie. I want to tell a couple of stories from Murder of Crows, because that's what I've been thinking about. You remember the bad guy, the slimy guy who had killed the black woman, and Cuba was supposed to defend him and get him off, and instead Cuba has a twinge of conscience and attacks him. And it's the end of Cuba's career. Okay. The actor was very good. when Cuba started attacking him, he wanted to turn red. He was a very light white guy, and he just thought if he's sitting there just turning red, it would be wonderful. So the actor, very good, he had us prepare a big bowl of boiling water, and and he's on the camera, a chest shot or something like this, and as Cuba is telling him this, he had us take the water, and he would just put his foot into it, and that hot water would get him, and he turned red, and it was a wonderful, wonderful effect. That I remember. That was brilliant. And you remember the situation where the girl takes off her top, and there's this big staircase, and he picks her up and he carries her up the staircase. He was young and athletic and strong, and there was not a stunt or anything. He did it. Well, when you see them up there, you see all the clothes, and the camera follows the clothes, and you think you're going to see him in bed, but instead he's doing her against the wall, and you see his ass, and he's naked, and he's fucking her against the wall. Okay. A nudity scene is almost always tense. The actors can be a little nervous about it. The director's always nervous about it. The crew and all this. So they clear the set and they make sure that nobody can go there and be there unless you have to be there and all that. So there's almost always stressful and tension. Trust me, stressful and tension is not what you want to be on a creative movie set. So Cuba comes out in a full-length robe, and he gives a talk to. He said, "Now we're all professionals here, and blah blah blah, and all this like that." With a straight face, he's saying that, and then he lets the robe drop, and he's tied onto his cock a fire hose that reaches the floor with a ridiculous-looking head on it with big hairs and things like that. It's hilarious, and everybody started laughing like crazy. And he broke all the tension, and he used humor to loosen us all up, and we shot the scene. I thought that was brilliant. That was memorable. It leads me to the point that humor, that producers who are tense about the money and tense about the schedule and worry about everything and full of stress, they like it when the crew is stressful. They don't like to see the crew laughing and happy. If they're not laughing and happy, and they don't want to be miserable when the crew is happy. So they try to get us to be stressful, and they say, we want to see urgency, and we want to put this thing on there, and that the current long hours, you just exacerbate that. A loose crew is a creative crew. And if you need to find the energy and the ambition to do something innovative, or something really off the charts, or something experimental or exciting, and something creative, you've got to be relaxed to do it. You can't do that out of tension. Fear is the enemy of creativity. So humor on the set is powerful. You think of humor as light? No, it is powerful. Because humor keeps everybody, including the director and including the actors, loose. And a loose mind is creative mind. First of all, the concept of truth is very elusive, very evasive, but it's still very cool. When you see an actor really in the moment, the actor is in their mind, that character living in the area, the time, the space of the fictional character, and they convince you there is no question, this is truth. The actor has the truth, has the belief, but the actor trying to be clever, trying to be likable, trying to con you and doing clever things and stuff like that, you can also tell. And this is the essence between what is good and what is bad. What is good is heartfelt. It is from your own personal core values or what you believe. And even if you don't have much of a budget, and even if your craft is beginning, even if your craft is crude, if you're talking what you believe, if you're saying what you believe, it's generally a good movie. And Hollywood is full of the greatest artists and technicians in the world, the people who have survived all the competition and dedicated their life to be able to work a microphone or to work a focus pull or to work a dolly or a steady camera or something so perfectly that they're like Olympic class athletes. And this community of really great technicians and artists, because there's a place where the art and the technical merge into one. You can't tell them apart. And they're doing this sometimes to silly, stupid, overly simple stories because that's where the money is. And it's the money that can hire the big professional crews. So that's sometimes what is a big movie and a well-crafted movie and a very well-made movie can also be a pretty bad piece of shit. And yet something more sincere from the heart can be excellent even though it's crude. So I just want to say that's what is a good movie. I think that's at the core of it. When I look at a movie as an audience, because really it's not as much what the filmmaker wants as what the audience feels. You know, I mean, your product is the emotions that you inspire in the audience. And as an audience member, I want to be so involved in the film. I want it to be so completely. I used to play chess. And when you're really into a chess game, your mind is so full of all the moves and the counter moves and the counter moves and all that, that there is nothing left in your mind. Your whole brain is consumed with that. And it's refreshing because all the things you were worried about and all that, they all disappear. All it's like cleaning, it's like washing out the brain with a fire hose and all the bad stuff is gone because you've cleansed it and all has, well, I want to be in that state in the movie where I'm so into the movie that if you ask me after the movie, how did I like the cinematography? I'd say, the what? I have to look at it again or turn off the sound or something to see it. So to me, that state of intensity, of emotional intensity, is what makes a great movie. In Hollywood, it's very popular to say, story, story, story. Story is the important thing. Everything must serve the story, and you must be humble and not have your photography upstage the story, and you must support the story. That's all that it's all about. Well, there's truth to that, but there's also bullshit. If you go to an art museum, a really good one, and you're high and you're euphoric because the art is so beautiful, it touches you so deeply, it consumes you. There's no story there, but you're at a full high of enlightenment. You're joyful, you've experienced beauty, you're inspired, it reaches you deeply. The same thing with the music concert. Where's the story in a music performance? And yet it reaches you as deeply as any other art form. So my feeling is that if the story's weak, it's weak. You're not gonna. It's gonna be hard to help it. And if the story is strong, then great photography and beauty and dramatic photography will only enhance it, will only make it stronger. So the idea of being modest and subjugating and stepping back and not doing great photography because you don't want to upstage the story, I think is a little bullshit, frankly. So for me, I want photography to be powerful and dramatic and rich and full of textures and involving and have a big presence. And hopefully the story is strong enough they can coexist and make the experience deeper. And if the story's bad, I can't help it. All I can do is make it beautiful. So that's kind of going against the grain a little bit of what is normally preached in Hollywood, but it is what I think. In A Murder of Crows, The story came from the Faust legend. And that is such a classic, great story of being tempted by the devil and then the devil owning you and all that. And it's such a solid thing that it was a great foundation. And Rowdy Harrington, the director, and I, and all the other artists, the company of artists, we made the thousands and thousands of decisions trying to build it and enhance it and put the textures and everything else in. We started in Key West, Florida, because it was mainly days and it's already what it is and there's not much stuff you can do with it. And it was an easy way for us as an ensemble, as a company, as a dance troupe, if you will, to know each other and get going and find our rhythm and pace and find our communications. And so that was very, very smart of Rowdy and the people to start off with that, and it wasn't all that long. And then we moved to New Orleans, which was mainly nights. And New Orleans is a hell of a city. It's got real culture, it's got real textures, it's got history, and it's got wonderful, wonderful moods and textures. And our opportunity, I won't call it a challenge, our opportunity was to make it a central character, to make the culture, the accents of the actors, the colors, the quarter, the sex, everything about New Orleans to be a texture, because that context, situation made the story much better. It made it stronger. The most significant was my marriage to Theo, because we have been together 58 years and we've had our lives together. All the traveling I've done, I shoot in China, and at the end of the show, she comes to China and we experience that. When I did a lot of traveling in the early days of our marriage, she had piano sonatas to learn and concerti and all that, and she was busy. So instead of saying, "Oh, Bob, I'm so lonely, you're not here," I was out totally busy in a movie, and she was here totally busy in her music, and she was as consumed by her art as I was by mine. So we got through that. If we were so dependent, we had nothing else in our lives, we probably wouldn't have survived that. But because she understands what it's like to be dedicated as an artist, and so do I, we understand each other. And I think that foundation, we don't have any kids, but we got a lot of nieces and nephews and all that. Probably, I don't think I could have gone through it's hard to break into the movie industry. Really hard, really discouraging. I don't care who you are, unless your daddy's a big deal, or your mother. And so what you need to get through the discouragement of being this big and they're doing all this stuff and all this and being jealous of the people that are in there, what you need is a big passion, that you love the stuff so much that even when I decided to quit once, it was just too hard. And I thought, what would I do? And I couldn't think of anything. So I went back. It's, so anyway, for me, it was my marriage.